Hi guys, Lindsay here with Storybook Family Farm. In today's video, I want to show you how to make a garden gate out of a pallet. Pallets can be bought pretty much anywhere. I know on Craigslist you can a lot of times search for pallets and you will find somebody that's selling them for relatively cheap. Places like Tractor Supply, they a lot of times will have their old pallets just sitting outside free for the taking. So there's tons of different ways to get pallets. A lot of factories too, you can just contact them and they'll let you have the ones that aren't in that great a shape. This is one such pallet. It is not in perfect shape, but it was free. So one of the most important things with making a garden gate is that you want to make sure that the pallet boards are kind of spaced close together. So like this one here, it's just a few inches in between the boards, probably about 2.5 inches is what most of them have in between them. Their pallets are not perfect. They're not perfectly spaced. But this pallet is a little bit damaged. So right over in here, it is obviously missing a board. And this board here is very misshapen and very cracked. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cut that section off that is not ideal. This video does include power tools, so it will be noisy. So while I'm using the power tools, I do recommend turning down your volume, especially if you are wearing headphones, because, well, tools are noisy. I also am not very tech savvy, so I don't know how to edit videos or to change it so the volume is differently when people watch them. Sorry, not my thing. My thing is very much building stuff for cheap and growing food. So those skill sets do not transfer well over to technology, but here I am. So yeah, we're gonna get started. I have a sawzall that I'm going to be using, and I also have a jigsaw that I'm going to be using. They are very helpful tools with working with pallets, especially to have a sawzall. I used to beat the pallets apart using like a hammer and a crowbar. That takes forever to do, and a lot of times you end up just really splintering the wood and causing more cracks and damage. So I eventually got smarter and learned to use a sawzall. The corded ones have a lot more power than a battery operated one. So if you're ever taking a pallet apart by cutting off the nails, definitely use a corded one instead of a battery powered one. But to just cut it up for stuff like this, a battery powered one is definitely strong enough. So now we will get ready to start. So I will make my first set of cuts right over here. One of the most important things you want to do before you ever make a cut onto the pallet is to thoroughly inspect the pallet to see what side is not very nice, because we are going to be removing this here top piece of wood. So it is in worse shape than the bottom piece, so it's going to be what gets taken off. So you want to very carefully grab hold of the pallet so that way you don't drop the pallet or get hurt. All right, so now that that piece is cut off, it will end up becoming probably like a chicken perch or something. We raise Phantom chickens, so they love the pallet board width to make little perches and stuff. We had built a coop a while back with pallet stuff, and I had made all these fancy perches, and that sort of a thing. And the chickens elected to just use the pallet wood as a perch instead of anything nice and fancy. So I'm going to set my sawzall out of the way so I don't trip over top of it. You definitely want to make sure you're leaving your workspace nice and clean. Otherwise, trip hazards make easy, simple jobs become a nightmare. So the next thing you want to do is you want to then flip the pallet back over to the bad side that you're going to cut off. And then you will end up taking the sawzall and just sort of like trimming down the side. So I'm just going to basically go like this down the side. You always want to keep an eye on what side of the pallet is what is going to be discarded, because you do not want to accidentally cut off the wrong side and then be left with inferior wood for your gate. So now we will get that done. And while I'm cutting this, I'm actually going to cut through the back side of the boards as well, so that way everything is all freed up and done. Alright, so the reason why when I cut off the back side, I did not cut all of it off at the very top is because I like to make my garden gate look like it has like a white picket fence type of design to it. So that's what I'm doing. So you don't need the other pieces to be standing up all the way at the back. So then you take a marker and you trace on your design. This will not be perfect. I'm using power tools that are not very precise. They don't have very precise movements, and it's just something whimsical. So you take your marker and you just essentially draw a triangular shaped peak onto it. And you could totally leave it as a square if you wanted to, or you can, get as creative with it as you want. After all, it's your garden, so do what you want with it. So this part is not going to be very well visible. For safety's sake, I obviously cannot cut up against the fence line. I'd rather not get hurt. But I'll show you guys the lines that I'm making, that I made up close and personal. So we did, there we go, now it's visible. There's some whimsical looking lines on here that I'm going to attempt to cut out. I highly doubt that it'll look anything like what the marker is, but so I'm just going to use the board that I cut off. This is the back piece board here. I'm going to use it essentially as a stand to make it safer for cutting on this wood, so that way I don't lose a finger. so now this is fully supported with the 2x4 cutout piece that we had just removed. So then that way it is safe to do stuff with. Actually, I might be able to put the camera through my fence here. There, now you guys might be able to see it a little bit. Alright, so as you can see, once I get the camera unstuck, none of the boards stayed how I wanted them to stay. So I will end up trimming them down some because some of the peaks ended up, the wood ended up splintering off, which is very common with a lot of pallet stuff, especially when you're cutting towards the edges. But so I'm going to end up trimming some of this off to make it so that way it is more less impaley. But I'll show you guys what it ended up turning out like. Alright, so like this peak here, it is very, very sharp. It came off not correctly. This one here, you can tell too that the wood just splintered off because there was a crack in the board. So that is something that you have to take into consideration when doing stuff like this with pallets, is it will not be perfect. That's why I said that the lines don't really matter if they are imperfect or not, because, well, life happens, stuff happens, nothing's perfect. So you have to just sort of roll with it. So yeah, that is how I make a garden gate with a pallet. So I hope this video gave you inspiration and ideas to make something cool out of a pallet. And turn it into not a pallet anymore. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have questions, please leave it in the comment section below. Share it on social media if you think you know somebody that might be interested in this sort of thing. And please subscribe to our channel so that way you can help us grow. Thanks for watching. Have a good one, guys.